It's as close to time travel as we're gonna get. This week in music history with Marty Miller.
Hello. This is the week that we're looking at June 2nd until June 6th in music history. We boot through the week in less than 10 minutes and I give you loads of bits and pieces to think about and you go, oh, right, that was this week, was it? I bet you never, ever think that. But, you know, maybe from now on you might. Or not. This week we got the record of a time when Phil Lynott asked the question,
is there anybody here with any Irish in them?
You know where it goes after that, don't you? In 1970 this week, Ray Davies was forced to travel thousands of kilometres to re-record just one word.
And it tastes like Coca-Cola.
And there was sadness after the madness in the Faces camp this week back in 1997. First of all, the madness.
I think we're getting the airline pilot in the pool first and the co-pilot, followed by most of the audience.
Let's do this.
This week in music history, a week in less than 10 minutes.
In 1976 this week, Wings set a new world record when they performed in front of 67,100 fans in Seattle. The largest attendance at the time for an indoor crowd.
Here we go.
This week in 1978, Thin Lizzy gave us the live double album Live and Dangerous. It was recorded in Philadelphia, London and Toronto during 1977, during those tours that accompanied Johnny the Fox and Bad Reputation. But a lot of the album was actually touched up and polished up in the studio afterwards, and there's not very much of it is truly Lizzy live. But this part is...
Is there anybody here with any Irish in them? Is there any of the girls that'd like a little more Irish in them?
1989, 52-year-old Rolling Stone Bill Wyman married 19-year-old Mandy Smith. There's nothing wrong with that, said he. Wyman's 28-year-old son was best man. Oh my God, it's just so sick and wrong. All the other four Stones attended. The marriage lasted 17 months from the actual wedding reception. First of all, here's Bill Wyman.
There was a few problems on the way, but we finally made it. And I just feel wonderful.
Well, I wish him lots of luck. I think it's a very good idea he got married.
I'm glad he's finally taken the plunge.
Speaking of the Stones, Charlie Watts would be having another birthday if he was still around. What an old, lovable git. I would loved to have interviewed him because he loved to be interviewed. Clearly. Listen to this.
Let's talk about your other career. Apart from the Rolling Stones, you run the Charlie Watts Big Band or Orchestra. What do we call it? Tell us about it.
What?
Tell us about the Charlie Watts Big Band.
That's what it is.
And is it's a really large band, isn't it? It brings together...
It's enormous. It's called Self-Indulgence.
Does it take a great deal of adjusting when you come to play with the Rolling Stones after doing something like that?
It's the same thing, really.
Well, really?
Yeah. You have to play the drums, isn't it? As well as you can.
How long can you see the Rolling Stones keeping going for?
As long as someone wheels you out, I think.
1967, Light My Fire was released in the States by The Doors, where it went on to become the number one single of 1967. Imagine now, remember, that was the big summer of love, and Light My Fire was absolutely everywhere. Here's keyboard player Ray Manzarek breaking it down for us.
Definitely a bop. Robbie Krieger comes in with a song called Light My Fire, the first song he ever wrote. A minor to F sharp. Very nice. And Densmore said, let's make it, it's got to give us a Latin thing. And that's the Latin.
In 1970, and with technology today, this would not needed to have been done, but Ray Davies of the Kinks was forced to make a trip from New York to London to record one word in a song. Davis had to change the word Coca-Cola to Cherry Cola after the band song Lola was kind of frowned upon by the BBC, and in fact they said, we don't think we can play that because of Coca-Cola advertising bans and all of that. So Cherry Cola is what it became.
I met her in a club down in Old Soho, where you drink champagne and it tastes like Coca-Cola. C-O-L-A Cola.
Zipping through a week in a matter of minutes. This Week in Music History, the podcast.
1942. We take it all for granted now, but Capitol Records was launched in the States. The boss man there was the man who invented the art of record promotion, sending copies of new songs to disc jockeys so they might be played on the radio. However, making records back then, well, actually it's still quite a technical affair.
All set in the studio? Everything is ready in the control room, so let's go. This might be the third try or the 23rd. The orchestra stays at it, playing the number over and over until Capitol's recording director is satisfied it's letter perfect.
1977, the Jam's debut single In the City made the top 40 in the UK singles chart. Here's Paul Weller on Being the Jam.
It's either divided up into like heavy metal dirge or nonsense disco music, or otherwise it's like all the so-called new wave groups are just doing exactly the same things all the previous bands used to have done. Like there's no difference between The Clash and Genesis or Led Zeppelin as far as I'm concerned. And we're just looking to try and do something really exciting and something different.
Sad old stuff from 1997. Founding member of The Small Faces and The Faces, Ronnie Lane died. He was just 51 years of age, had battled MS for 20 odd years. There was mad old times in that band. Here's drummer Kenny Jones and Ronnie Wood.
There were all crazy moments in The Faces. Like we said, when we played, we just invited everyone back to the hotel and wanted to continue what was happening on stage back at the hotel. It's non-stop.
I think getting the airline pilot in the pool first and the co-pilot, followed by most of the audience that would follow us back from the gig. And they would get them all in the pool first and then pick the ones that we liked to party on with us.
This Week in Music History, a week in less than 10 minutes.
2002, Dee Dee Ramone, real name Douglas Glenn Colvin, bass guitarist with the Ramones, died in Hollywood. Heroin overdose. He was just 49. He was the group's primary songwriter, penning songs such as Rockaway Beach, 53rd and 3rd, and Poison Heart. And he was mad.
We play so loud and all the amps couldn't take it, but now we got these amps that they work. You know, we can really push them, and we could blow this place apart if we wanted to. We'd set up everything.
1979, Def Leppard played Crooks Workingmen's Club in Sheffield. At the time, the gig was actually reviewed by a music paper called Sounds, and that led to a recording contract with Phonogram Records. Here is Rick Savage of Def Leppard walking back in to the Crooks Workingmen's Club in Sheffield many years later.
I've not stepped in this place since 1979, I believe. It's bigger than I remember. When you did gigs like this, because it was a working men's club, you were kind of expected to play other people's songs as well as your own. And it's something that we never really wanted to do, but realised, you know, you have to pay the bills, so we had to play Thin Lizzy songs.
Finally, 2006, Billy Preston died of kidney failure. The Grammy Award-winning keyboard player worked with some of the greatest names in the music industry. Of course, the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Nat King Cole, Little Richard, for God's sake, Ray Charles, George Harrison, Elton John, Eric Clapton, Bob Dylan. Sadly, after such a colourful career, he fell on really hard times. Crime, drugs, jail and poor health all followed. Back at brighter times, though, working with the Beatles.
They were there recording, working on Let It Be. So I came in and they said, hey, what's happening? So we started jamming and reminiscing old songs. And then John asked me, would I like to stay over and help them finish the album? I said, sure I would, you know. So I stayed over, and during the time we were working on Let It Be, we also did the Abbey Road and the White Album. So I was over in England about 6 months out of the year.
And that is a look at this week in music history. We've just hammered through June 2nd until June 6th in music history. It's time travel without going anywhere. Thanks a lot for listening to the podcast. Until next time.
This week in music history. A week in less than 10 minutes.